Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Josh.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I've been saving for after we went live.
I can't believe you've held
I
it
have.
back.
Have you ever gotten mad at me?
Never.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, I know.
That's good.
Phew. Moving on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was going to be. I was hoping that would help with the substance for the topic of today with
so you want me to
anger.
be honest so they can give.
All right, let me ask you this: Do you see a difference in anger and being mad? Is it different to you?
Mm-hmm. I think anger is a global term. Mad to me is a part of that.
So I think it's possible you haven't been mad at me. Maybe you've been angry with me, frustrated.
Probably both.
You've been mad at me.
Yes,
haven't you?
you've been mad at me.
Well, to me, mad is like you offended me, like you hurt me. Like I'm like, what do you think? Who do you think you are? You know,
okay,
I don't think I've ever had that feeling towards you. But
Okay. You've thought, who does she think she is? Of course you have.
sorry, I just blew people's ears out, laughing into the mic. Yes. No, I haven't. Oh, Freudian slip. I don't think so. But I have been frustrated. Yeah. And can you tell if I'm mad at you?
Mm-hmm. Can you tell if I'm mad at you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to pretend you're not though
I know.
when that happens.
I know our dance.
That's good. Okay. Well, got that out there.
Yeah.
So,
a little honesty, right?
yeah. But one thing I think we've been pretty good at is it hasn't turned into, there's no toxic anger or like, I also think like, there's a level, like if it reaches to a point that we talk about it, I don't think either one of us has ever come out and said like, hey, I'm mad at you on this, but I think it's more like there's something frustrating that's happening that we're involved in, and then we talk about it and figure it out, and onward and upward.
Yeah, I think that's true, which is part of the dance.
Yeah,
because we don't
sure.
just like go at screaming at each other or anything.
Was that Harriet Lerner's book called? Was it called The Dance of Anger? Okay. Yeah, I've never read that book. I should.
I read it a long time ago.
I mean, it's still. I think it. From what I hear, it holds up. So.
Well, it's just also something people relate to. Just even the idea.
Right. It just seems so simple, though. Like.
Yes.
You know, like no one. It's like no one wrote a book like that before.
I know, and maybe they did, and like most things in psychology, it's just been repackaged in a better way.
Yeah, it seemed like it'd be the first book written. Actually, the first book written would be shame.
Yes.
And then anger.
Uh-huh.
Or probably anger,
probably
so you don't have to deal with the
first.
shame.
Exactly. We're more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, good for Harriet Lerner, I guess.
Good for her. Yeah.
I think probably made her very rich. It's a very popular book. So we're gonna talk about it. We'll go ahead and do our intro real quickly. So we're gonna talk about anger after infidelity. So don't go anywhere. And we're back. Yep. So appreciate everybody waiting through that long intro video. But yeah, we're welcome to Therapist Take podcast. We are going to talk about anger, and the role of anger, the complexities of anger after infidelity or after someone has discovered there's been infidelity. And so let's just go ahead and before we put that up, Hannah, sorry. Did you just put it up on the screen? My bad. But before we put up the structure, let me just remind everybody to please, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, or wherever you're watching this. We would appreciate if you headed on over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you can be notified when more videos are posted. But also, we do record these live, but then usually about a week or two later, I will upload them to the podcast or the audio platforms, and so you're able to listen to them there if you want. And so if that's where you're listening to this podcast, and please follow us and give us a 5-star review and write something nice if you care to. If you don't like the podcast, just move on to something else. But it's really about trying to please the algorithms. So the other thing I think it's important to take note of too is that we try to include a lot of resources in the show notes. So make sure you check out the show notes or the description of the video. And there's usually resources like therapist directories and books. Like I didn't put Harriet Lerner's book in there, but I'll probably go back and add that. So, good. All right. So let's talk about the structure real quickly of the episode, and then we'll dive right into it. You good with that?
Good.
All right. So we're going to talk about anger after infidelity, and we're going to start out with just talking about the purpose of anger, and after the discovery, is there a purpose? Is there a point? Toxic anger, which I think everybody would agree exists, and healing anger. Like, is there such a thing? Can anger be healing? Mm-hmm. And then anger and accountability. And as how anger relates to boundaries and might help with boundaries. We'll talk about that. And then probably one of the harder discussions will be the anger of the unfaithful partners.
Yes.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
And we'll have resolved this whole anger problem, and we'll be done.
The world will be more full of peace.
That's right. Yeah. So we were talking right before we went live about how hot it is right now in Oklahoma. It's like 103.
Yeah.
Or supposed to be that this weekend anyways. And if you're not from around this area, like it's a humid hot, like it's miserable. Yeah. And what were you listening to? We were talking about.
I saw somebody talking about how you're just over the top angry and irritable because of the heat.
Yeah. I wonder, you could go with hangry with that, heat angry.
Angry. I know.
Hot angry.
I know.
Hunger kind of stole the show on
It
that.
did.
So we'd have to come up with another term for that. But yeah, I definitely can see that. But it makes sense. Like anytime your body's stressed out, I mean, that's what it's going to do is like create a level of stress. And so, but this topic of anger, we could have done just a general topic of anger. But I was trying to think of like, something unique with anger, and it's something that comes up a lot, obviously, when we're working with clients that have, and I think that most people understand it as like normal. Right. Like it's a reasonable use for rage. I think people would say this would be one of those situations. Like, if somebody raged out on you and after they found out that you were cheating, most people aren't going to bat an eye at that. Right. I'm not saying it's good or it's healthy or anything, but I think the general consensus is that anger makes sense after you found out your partner has been unfaithful. You agree?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, expected.
Right. So what's interesting, though, at least what I've noticed, and you can tell me if you've noticed the same thing, is that it's a much more complex. Like, I think people have a complicated relationship with anger in general.
I agree.
So you're definitely going to have people on the extremes where there are going to be some people that never will hardly ever let themselves feel it, much less express it. And then you're going to have people that probably need to rein it in, that need to be better at reining it in. And then you're going to have everything in between.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's also things like how anger gets grouped with shame. So a lot of people have trouble experiencing anger without experiencing shame. Am I saying that correctly?
I think so.
Yeah. I start throwing in like without, trying to make sure I'm getting it right. Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, that they feel angry and they feel shame at the same time. And so it's just easier to, their go-to is to find a way to suppress and just, have some kind of maladaptive coping mechanism like sex, for example. A lot of people that are sex addicts or chronic, with infidelity or just compulsive, sometimes they might be angry about something and they just don't know how to feel it without feeling shameful about that too.
Yeah, I think shame and anger go together. I always tell my clients when we start exploring anger is that anger is really never experienced in isolation.
Oh yeah.
So it's anger and, right?
Yeah.
What's its, one buddy or several.
Well, it's commonly been thought of as a secondary emotion, and I don't know if I quite agree with that anymore.
I don't know if I need it tiered anyways.
Right, yeah. I mean, does it matter? I mean, because sorry. The reason I think that, though, or I don't think that anymore, is because it has such a valuable purpose to it. It
does.
And so I think the reason why people think it's a secondary emotion is because of what you just said, is that it's not secondary, it's just often grouped. But aren't most emotions like that?
Right. Sure, of course. And of course, the more you know yourself, I would hope the more complex you get, and you can say, I feel more than one thing. Right. Mad, sad, and glad are not sufficient for grown-ups and their feelings vocabulary. Right.
Yeah.
But I do think that one of the reasons I'm glad we're talking about this today is that anger does have a bad rap, that it's destructive, or we need to really put a lid on it, or we need to avoid it, or it says something bad about ourselves to be angry. And while anger can be destructive, and why people do need to learn how to manage it without it being dangerous, especially after a betrayal, there's a real purpose and a real function to anger.
Yeah, I think that after a betrayal, you're just going to your body isn't going to let you not hide it anymore. I mean, and that's one thing that's interesting about anger when it comes to partners, is that they will, I think partners will, who, we always refer to, when we say partners, we're talking about the person who was cheated on. So the faithful partner, basically, it's like, this is not universally true. So it's a general truth here, is that they'll often feel like that, when my partner had the affair, like I was at the top of my game, and anger is a reflection of hurt and pain. And if I show just how angry I am, like I don't want to lose this person. So what guarantees do I get? And it's really easy to sit, and listen to this, and this hasn't happened to you, and sit in judgment of somebody else and say, like, they should just leave that, and I can't tell you how many people we've worked with where they said, I've said those exact same words, and then it happened to me, and leaving just wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
And isn't that easy? And maybe it shouldn't be that easy.
There's a reason it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
But there seems to always be like this really, there's some fear that we have of anger. And and some people need to have more fear of being angry because they are, that's their go-to.
Sure. Right.
So you have kind of both things. But let's talk about just the purpose of it in general. Like, and then we'll kind of move on to like the purpose in general, and then what's the purpose post discovery, like after discovery of infidelity. Yeah. And the reason I want to defer to you on this is because I felt like I really learned a lot about anger from you, not because you've been angry.
Because I'm an angry person.
No, I think just in our discussions, just how I've heard you talk about it and stuff. I find myself now using that language with clients. And in fact, the compassionate response continuum that I created, that there's a certain word that I think you'll probably use that is on that continuum that comes from what I felt like I learned from you. So
right. So I'll say what I think you've heard me say.
Yeah. Don't get it wrong, please.
Don't get it wrong. I probably will, because I won't remember.
You won't remember the word. Yeah.
That anger is a sign that someone has trespassed your boundaries, right? That something has taken some kind of violation, excuse me, some kind of threat, some kind of injustice, right? Something that's not safe. And so that's your alert system, right? Your anger, your irritability, right? Is about, think about when you're standing in line and someone's too close to you. What do? You kind of almost get bigger, right? Like you move your body, you kind of like, get like, no, I've got this is my bubble, right? And it's this very
then you
basic core, right? Of course. And then it's this, but it's a very basic human response, I think, to no, that's too close. And I'm going to make sure that my space has been acknowledged and protected.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so the key word there that you did use it, the word that I was waiting for you to use is trespass. And really after, I can't remember how long ago it was that we had that conversation where it really it got me thinking about like that maybe there's a purpose to all emotions, which I do think that is generally the case. And I think that most of the time anger is there to let people know someone or something, or there's been a trespass. There's been a boundary violation. Someone has crossed the line. Now, there is the line itself can be debatable,
Yes.
right? Like maybe
Right.
sometimes our lines are too rigid.
Right.
Our boundaries need to evolve and to change and to grow and adapt, and so that is a possibility.
Absolutely.
But
Sure.
sometimes we don't know that until you get angry about it,
And then you
until
go,
there's been a trespass.
What's going on? Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's just kind of the general function. So good that we have anger in our lives. And that's kind of what you were saying, is like, it's kind of got this bad rap when it's so critical to our survival, first of all, and then, but also to our growth and development, our relational growth and development. Can you imagine a couple comes in to you and says, we've never got in an argument. What's the first thing you think of?
Ruh-roh. Right?
Yeah. Little Jetson humor
a little
there. Is that Jetsons? Ruh-roh? Or is that
that's
Scooby-Doo? Okay,
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shaggy.
What's the dog
Scooby.
in Jetsons? Is there one in Jetsons?
There was a dog. Yeah.
It's Astro.
That's right. That's right.
Sorry, we digress.
Okay, yeah,
but
digress.
we got it.
But yeah, uh-oh meaning they're either lying,
Yeah.
right? Or they're not aware of the anger that exists.
Right.
Or they're very afraid of anger. And I think where we live in the middle of the country, and we really value being nice people. And I do think that we have a more intense reaction to anger. Like when you travel places outside of that, and there's much more people being comfortable, right? Saying or having confrontation.
Right.
Right. And then you realize, oh boy, maybe I have slightly a middle America view of we should really avoid anger at all costs.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And so, my first thought is when a couple says that is like, well, you guys haven't been married long enough, or you're lying to yourself, or to each other, like suppressing the feeling, saying we've never been in an argument, but we probably should have been a few times, and usually the effort there is noble, we don't want to argue, like when you love somebody,
be stuck in conflict. Sure.
And what if, and you don't have any guarantee that the other person's going to handle their feelings well.
Right.
So,
right.
And so it's complicated. I will say that, like, it's not exactly easy to do, and it's different from one person to the next and one relationship to the next. Okay. So now we kind of established, like, just that's the purpose in general, or at least how we see it. What about, after the discovery of infidelity, and let's just focus on the partner right now, because we'll get to the unfaithful partner at the end.
What's the function of the anger for the partner?
Yeah.
I think it's to make sure that the destruction from the betrayal is clearly known, right? And I also think that for most people, that they'll tell me they've never been so angry in their life. So the intensity of their anger is something that they have no map for, right? They have no previous experience in their brain and body to say, oh, I'm mad, and I'm usually mad, and this is what I do. This is so overwhelming and new territory, right? And that's there because this is probably a new event, and it's hitting you in all the places all at once, right? And it's so intense because you need to attend to it, right? You need to say, these are the violations that have taken place.
Yeah, I mean, I think 100% there that, it's, when it comes to a betrayal trauma, it's a trauma. It's not crossing the line. It's plowing through the line. It's obliterating the line, And so the, anger is there for the trespass reason, but I think it kind of takes on a new function after infidelity to illustrate, like, the magnitude of what has happened, and I think it holds the partner. We're going to get into accountability with boundaries here in a minute, but it holds the person who carries the injury, the betrayal injury. It holds them accountable to not. Being a cheap forgiver, as Janice Abrams Springs would say, so not just ignoring the injury and just an effort to keep the relationship, to just dive right back into it in at minimum an emotionally dangerous situation, you know. And so it's very functional. It's very uncomfortable, you know. And I tell clients a lot that this part of your brain is more concerned about your safety and less about your comfort.
Right. Right.
And so that's why you feel it, you know. And so it's very important. But there's do you see like clients getting, because you work a lot with the partners that have been betrayed more than I do. Do you see a lot of discomfort with anger?
Yes. Yes.
What's the
Well, I think
your understanding?
I do think it's the intensity of it. They've just never felt it. It's never blown through everything, right? Because betrayal attacks your sense of identity, your sense of safety, your sense of trusting your own instincts. I mean, so you're so angry because it's kind of like you talk it plowing through. Everything's destroyed, right? And so the intensity of your fear is primal, and so your anger is very primal. And people they can feel even scared of their own anger.
Right.
Although I will say that a lot of people will say, I'd rather be mad than sad.
Yeah.
Because you know what happens a lot during the anger part of recovery? That's when they come to therapy.
Yeah.
That's when they find group and resources and books and information. Because the anger also, this is the other purpose of it, right? Not just to indicate the violation, but it actually becomes the driver to, well, what are we going to do about this, right? It actually helps you task things that need to be done.
Right. And to go back to what we were talking about earlier, though, is like the coexistence of emotions. Like, I'd rather be mad than sad. It's like, it's really like you're going to just be both.
Yeah.
You know, and then sometimes usually all the time, you're going to experience the meta levels, which when you have feelings about your feelings. So now I'm mad that I'm sad, or I'm sad that I'm mad.
Yeah.
And it's
sad that I'm an angry person now. I hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, you know, that's kind of where the expression, like it was never supposed to be like this, right? That is a kind of a meta emotion expression, and meta just means something about something, you know, something stacked on it. So meta communication is communicating about communicating, meta emotions about emotion.
Right.
So like so that it was never supposed to be this way. It's like, I'm mad that I'm hurting because of this thing. You know, it wasn't supposed to be like this.
Right.
And so so it's has as uncomfortable as it is, it's very important as part of recovery, and part of what we have to do is nurture it, you know, into existence, to not be afraid of it, because it's there whether you want it to be or not. It's there.
It's part of it. It exists.
You know?
Now it's been born.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of times when the unfaithful partner is talking to me about their partner's anger, you know, and they're like, I didn't do anything, I haven't done anything else wrong, you know, and then they get so angry at me, and I was like, because they relive the experience of what you did do through, you know, through their anger, you know, so like, so I say like they're sensitive to the touch on things, not because you did anything new wrong, but because you did something that was extremely hurtful and painful, and their anger is going to hold you accountable to, and it's going to hold them accountable to their healing, and hold you accountable to your fidelity, you know, or to your healing, their recovery, I guess, because it's not going to, anger is not going to let the partner trust the relationship until it feels safe.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And that's the point. I mean, we need that there. We have to be grateful for our anger.
Yeah. And
then the more we push back on it, I think remember the movie Inside Out, when try to keep anger, you know, he just gets madder, you know, if you try to keep him from doing his thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But let's talk about the next topic, because I think it fits perfectly. Like there is a risk. There is dangerous experiences with anger, right? And I think we kind of labeled it for this one, toxic anger.
Yeah. Right? So toxic anger versus healthy anger, if that even exists, you know. So yes, can it become toxic? Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
sure. Yeah.
You know, and I think at least on the partner side of things that it probably will start. They'll start pushing those boundaries for themselves with
Sure.
their anger, and I think that's. I tell people all the time that look, I'm not saying it's okay. Like when I'm working with for people who don't know, I work a lot with the partner who's been unfaithful, and I say like it doesn't. You hurting someone doesn't give somebody the right to hurt you back.
Right.
But it's also understandable that hurt people hurt people. We've all heard that expression, right? So it's probably going to happen, and we're going to work at having a lot of compassion as they learn to set their boundaries.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
know? So I do think in the type of pain that partners are dealing with, how it, can just dump gasoline on the anger flame. I think it has the potential to become toxic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Well, I do think that thing I said earlier kind of fits here too, is that a lot of people like feeling mad more than they like feeling sad. And I think that also is how you can understand that anger becomes toxic or becomes ill, making you ill, because it's like, oh, I'd rather do that than go feel sad. So I keep myself hypervigilantly attending to the violations so that the anger stays churning, right?
Right.
Stays there. And I think that it really becomes toxic, not just to the person that's angry, but to the people that they want relationships with, right? I think that's the devastating, the part of it, right? A lot of people will say, okay, I'll go down with this ship, but they don't want to take people that they actually care about with them.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, like, anger, your body will try to hold you accountable to not letting it become toxic.
Right.
And I
It
do think we
will.
can plow right through that. We were just talking before about heat exhaustion and heat stroke,
Oh, yeah.
and like our bodies heat up, and like you were talking about, me playing baseball this weekend, and how I knew I shouldn't have been playing as much as I did, and I just did it anyway. I just ignored the signs, and I was sick, basically the next day. I wasn't sick, but I definitely I didn't sleep well, and I didn't feel good the next day.
Of course.
And because I just ignored the cues.
Yes, right.
My body screaming it. But if I had kept going, that's how we have heat stroke, and your body's going to shut you down.
Right. Eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think anger is a little different. I'm not saying like it, it's going to have that. It can have a biological effect on you that's severe.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people in this world that are angry people and will live their whole lives as angry people.
And they live a long time.
And they never pick up that something's wrong, that
Yeah.
maybe, Taylor Swift, it's me. We keep going back to that. I mean, I can't remember the lyrics to it ever.
I'm the problem. It's me.
It's me, I? Or
It's me high.
it's me, hi.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
I thought she was stuttering.
Oh, no.
It's me, I am the problem. It's me.
No, high.
Oh, it's me, hi. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Like hi, like hello.
Yes. Hello. Yeah.
I don't know what else it would mean.
Okay. Yeah. Could mean up.
Who's she
it's
talking
the
to?
opposite of low.
Is she in the
Hi.
mirror? Talking to the mirror?
You need to see the video. There's two versions of her.
Oh.
It's a very IFS.
That's cool. And so
image.
is the version she's talking to the better version, like a good version, or
No,
not so good version?
the not so good.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well,
Okay.
that's
There's
a new
your
episode.
homework.
We can
Yeah.
do that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Boy, Taylor Swift,
I
deep.
know.
That's deep stuff.
It is. Yeah. It's not just
I don't know.
poppy for the kids.
There'll probably be like a master's degree in Taylor Swift someday.
Oh, probably. My daughter will
What's your
probably
degree in
want it.
Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
Taylor Swift history and
Yeah.
philosophy.
Right. The philosophy of Taylor
Yeah.
Swift lyrics. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Okay. Digress.
you went with me on that
I
one.
did.
though.
I did.
I like that.
All right. I'll steer you back. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Where
So-
were you before?
That's you. I don't even know. No, we're talking about toxic anger, and
Yeah.
so I think everybody knows. I mean, this is no secret. This is preliminary stuff to get to what we need to talk about, because everybody, I think, agrees there's such thing as toxic.
Yes, I think
anger,
everybody
right?
can know.
But can anger be healing? I
Yeah.
think that's the question,
Mm-hmm.
because it's such an uncomfortable feeling, and I think yes, because I truly believe that all emotions serve a purpose, and if you honor them in the capacity that they're meant to be utilized, I think it can be a very healing thing.
I think so too. I know it, and I often will tell my clients, I want you to come in here and tell me about a story where you lost it. And I'll like couch that with in a safe place, not operating a vehicle, et cetera. Right. But yeah, I want to normalize the expectation that you're going to be angry. And you're probably, and then usually what happens too is that you're sad along with it. Right. So you start out, yelling or whatever, and you're crying. Right. So I want to normalize that, because I do think it's healing, because I think that it helps you do what I think a lot of intense emotion is about, which is moving through your emotions, right? So it's not about getting stuck in it. It's not about ignoring it. It's about moving through it.
So you just made me think of something that might be, I would get your opinion on this, because I just literally just thought of this. So, but I was thinking, like, how can we measure, if it's toxic versus healing? And I'm wondering if vulnerability is the answer there. Okay. Like, kind of what you were describing was, for one, anger shouldn't come easy, so when you do feel it and express it, if you're feeling vulnerable at the end of it or through it, like sadness, like, or fear or something like that to me would probably, I would say you're leaning more toward the healthy anger. If you're not feeling vulnerable in it and it escalates,
you're feeling like more righteous,
it comes easy to you and it's reactive and it just feels like you just get angrier as you express your anger, I would say that's probably more toxic.
That's a good way to think of it. Yeah.
So it should be hard.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, you shouldn't at the end of it. I think you can feel good about yourself from an intellectual standpoint, but from a vulnerability standpoint, it's not like, it shouldn't be your favorite thing.
Yeah, I think most people use words like exhausted or
tired,
and even in pain a little, right? Like, my clients say to me, "Gosh, when I'm so angry, my heart just hurts."
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that if you feel shameful about it, that's a different thing. It needs to be discussed, because I actually think that that is, I wouldn't say that's toxic anger. That's toxic shame at that point. If your shame is keeping you from feeling and expressing something that's natural, normal for every human being that exists, then there's toxicity there. So we could probably do another episode on toxic shame at some point. But, But yeah, so for anybody listening that's wanting to know, like when you're kind of trying to measure, like, what does healing anger look like? Well, there's got to be a vulnerability aspect to it.
It invites that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does it, in moving to the third point, in talking about anger and accountability, so when you first hear that, it's just like anger and accountability, does it even fit for you? Does it?
Well, yeah.
Well,
but we're therapists.
Yeah. We're us.
Well, we've ingrained our training, right? Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So when you saw that on there, it hit. Okay. Do I ever write stuff where you're like, what does that even mean?
Well, I just can't read your handwriting. Sometimes.
You thought it meant something. You thought it just said something else.
Yeah.
What is anger and
yeah? Is that Z's?
Yeah. I fell asleep while I was writing it.
Yeah, I know.
What? That's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Did you watch that ever?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
when he's like, he like dies and he's like, but he wrote it out.
Yeah.
And then they said, why would he write that out? How?
Yes, I do.
So it's sorry.
I know, squirrel.
Man, we've had a lot of squirrels.
Today has been squirrely. Yeah, I know. But what does it mean? What did you mean when you wrote accountability?
Well, I think it goes back to another purpose of anger. Like it hold kind of what I mentioned earlier. It holds the partner, so the person that harbors it, accountable to their healing. Like, you have to honor your anger. Like, you have to, and it's gonna, I feel a certain way about something that you did. I've got to express it. Like, do you ever have regrets about somebody crossed a line and you did nothing or said nothing? Mm-hmm. I think I have more of those than I do with I said something but overkilled. I usually have that more with my kids because I'm not as afraid to express my frustration to them and stuff like that. But when it comes to like, I got a much longer list of times where I'm like, man, I wish I'd have said something,
Yeah.
you know, and I just dishonored what I felt like I dishonored this feeling that was there because I was
Dishonored
scared,
yourself. Yeah.
you know, or I didn't want to create
Any more
conflict.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And, I have this is a story I actually tell clients sometimes about when I was learning to get comfortable with my anger. And I was quite proud. To this day, I'm quite proud of myself for doing it. I also understand that the other person involved in this was probably uncomfortable, but I think that's the point, you know, because the other side of accountability is holding the other person accountable to what they need to do.
Yeah.
Now, we did an episode not too long ago where we asked the question of like, who are you to me? You know, which usually is a question that's asked kind of, you know, facetiously, you know, like rhetorically, condescending, you know.
Can be. Yeah.
But we were talking about a sense of, no, it's a really good question to ask when you're trying to decide how you want to respond to someone.
Yeah.
So this example that I'm going to give is, I probably wouldn't have handled it like this if this were someone that was a regular part of my life. But this was also a time in my life where I was very cognizant of that this was something I was needing to learn to do because I wasn't doing it enough. And so I basically was at a Home Depot, Lowe's type lumber store, basically, and I was looking for, you've heard this story before, but I was looking for an item that I wasn't familiar with because I was trying to repair something at my house, and I didn't know anything about this type of thing, but I felt like I could figure it out. So I don't know what things are called. I don't know how to just use the right terminology to describe these items. And so I can tell that he's getting a little frustrated, you know, so because I'm not using the language so his brain's working hard to try to figure out what I'm talking about. Yeah. Right. And then another customer walks up behind me. So now he's feeling pressured because he's got to he knows this other customer is waiting for him to help them, and I'm not really giving him what he feels like giving him much, you know. And so probably, you know, to see, this is a therapist. I mean, probably an effort to kind of diffuse or you know, the pressure that he's feeling, and try to, you know, make sure the other customer wasn't getting frustrated with having to wait. He decided to make a joke about, you know, the situation at my expense, you know, by looking at the other customer and teasing me condescendingly and laughing with the other customer against me, you know. And I was not happy about that. I was frustrated. I was angry. And but I calmly looked at him and I just said, this is something I call calling people out on their process, you know. And so I didn't raise my voice at him at all. I just looked at him and said, do you get paid? So it's kind of, I feel a little vulnerable telling the story, but like, do you get paid to help people or be condescending? That's what I asked him, you know. And then he's like, oh, no, I wasn't being I said, you were being condescending, you know. And I was like, and then we figured out what the part I needed, and he apologized. And, you know, you know, I'm proud of that interaction. I am okay with that, you know. And I wasn't ugly to him, or, you know, I didn't raise my voice at him, but he knew I was upset. And that's not something I'm used to doing, I probably would have just cut up with him. Yeah, I'm an idiot. You know,
Right.
I would have joined in on making fun of myself or something. You know, so that's an example to kind of give on like how like my anger was holding me accountable to my own value and sense of self-worth. And then when I expressed it, it held him accountable to his process. Yeah. You know, how his behavior was making somebody else feel, you know. And I think that is probably, I mean, it's always my go-to story on probably one of the best moments I've had on how I handled my anger with somebody else.
Because you are accountable to your own boundaries, which is, no, I'm going to be
Sure.
honest about
Yeah.
my feelings, because when I'm angry, that tells me that something is happening that I need to protect.
Right. I agree. Yeah. So that was kind of a long way of answering the question, but
No, it's a good illustration. Yeah.
so, so when it comes to like infidelity, it's the same thing. I think that for the partner who has been betrayed, they have to honor that anger. And you know what? It's not going to come out as pretty as what I just described.
No,
either.
it's not going to be calm, probably.
No.
No.
No. And that example I gave too, like I have another example I'm not going to tell where it wasn't as polished, but this is a polishing process.
Sure.
Too. So it's just going to be choppy and ugly, and you'd be like, yeah, I probably wish I could go back and handle that one a little differently as you start learning how to do it. But as you start doing that polishing process, I think you can have more and more of those stories where, I'm okay with getting angry, expressing it in a way that was functional for the situation and healing. That's because it's about boundaries.
It is. It is about boundaries. And I do think that when people are, especially partners who've been betrayed, when they're trying to come up with boundaries, because a lot of people don't know what they are, right? They're in a state of chaos. Like anger actually can be like, well, what gets you fired up? Like what doesn't feel right? You can use that again as a guidepost to go, well, then let's put some boundaries in place around that. Right. And so when you're feeling angry, then you can go, oh yeah, that's right. I have a boundary. I don't do that anymore, or whatever the statement is. Right.
Right. Yeah. And I think you would agree too that a lot of people who are kind of neck deep in maladaptive compulsive behavior, coping behaviors, they need to be called out on their process.
They do. Yeah.
Especially
because a lot of those have been around for so long that they are habitual and they are ingrained and they are maybe unconscious.
Yeah.
But you can't, if you're going to be in a relationship with someone, especially when betrayal, now we're trying to heal, you've got to call that stuff out for both people's sake.
Sure. And I think in the general sense, we all need to be called out on our processes sometimes, because there are many times that I didn't realize that my process was painful to somebody else. Right? It's not.
Right? Is that okay?
Yeah. My process isn't painful to you. Right, Carrie?
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
But everybody else,
Right,
as long as it's not to you, it's fine.
Right.
But no, I think it's just really, I think that's good and healthy. And, our spouses probably do that the best in a sense. I know my wife is like, I remember the time she told me that she was like, you tend to make things about you, which is like, golly, it really hits me hard. I'm like, because I know that's true, and I have to be extra. Like it hits that narcissistic thing, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be narcissistic, but I'm okay with it. But I have to be careful about like, I'll come home and I'll start telling her about my day or something like that, and I have to like back myself up. It's like, hold on a second, how was your day? Like I truly want to know. I just forget there's other worlds that exist out there besides mine, but she'll also know too that it's not my job to call myself out on a process that's painful to you, because I don't know it's painful to you until you tell me.
Right. That's right.
And so, but yeah, it can create arguments and a very awkward and uncomfortable situation. It can be embarrassing.
Yes. It can be gross.
Yeah, like if you
you're
pick your nose a lot or something, and
Right.
someone's like, "Hey, stop picking your nose."
That.
You're like,
But-
"Oh, no one saw that, right?"
Right.
Oh,
But
we all saw it.
It's
Everybody saw
if
it.
you have eyes, you saw it. No, but I think that we just need to say this explicitly, right? Which is, this is growth through pain.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, setting boundaries, using anger as your boundary indicator is painful, but that's
Right.
how you grow. And these may be things that you've always needed. Like you've talked a little bit about having a history of maybe not speaking up enough. But when something like betrayal happens, it takes anything that pre-existed and just exacerbates it even more. So you've got to have, you're going to be more angry because you need boundaries that really may be something you've needed a long time, but also are really important for the here and now when you're trying to heal from this.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about, with the time we have left, the anger of the unfaithful partner, because this is the reason why I think this is harder to talk about or harder to tackle is because I think again, the court of public opinion, when it comes to people who are unfaithful, is that they should just be grateful for everything, right. and or they deserve what's coming to them, or something like that. Sure. And we have a deeper understanding, I feel like, because of what we do, that it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah. And I think that from a treatment perspective, you're not going to start with this, right? There's a reason this is the last thing we're talking about today, but even just making it said, like, you're not going to ask a couple that comes in for treatment for betrayal trauma. You're not going to ask the person who had the extramarital affair, well, tell me about how angry you are and how that affected, the choices that you made. You're not going to start like that.
Right.
But it's also ridiculous and unfair that anger hasn't been a part of there. It's really complicated. And